Today I'm going to set up a backend for my website to handle data requests by creating an AWS API Gateway and connecting it to a simple Lambda function. I'm in my AWS Management Console and I need to make two things today. I need to make an API Gateway so that my Bigfoot website can talk to AWS. So we'll use the API Gateway for that. And then I'm going to use the Lambda function to process the data. I'm not going to use the Lambda connect to the database today, but that's what we will do. You can connect to DynamoDB or a regular database. I'm going to start out with a Lambda before the API Gateway and then just make the connection after I make my Lambda. So if you don't have Lambda under recently used, go ahead and type in lamb and you'll see Lambda. Now I have a few Lambda functions already. You might have a splash screen. Look for something that says create function. There we go. And we have a few options. You have some other fancy stuff here. I'm just going to author from scratch. I'm going to scroll down here, and because I'm not using authorization and authentication today, I will, but not today. I just want to get a basic setup. I'm going to call this Bigfoot Sightings. It's complaining because we already have one. And I'll say no auth. No auth. I'll use the latest version of Node. It's 18 at the time of this recording. I'm going to hit create function. And we got a function that's being created. Successfully created Bigfoot Sightings no auth. Let's scroll down a little bit in our Lambda function, and you'll see a section here that says code. If it's not selected, go ahead and select it. And we got our Bigfoot Sightings no auth. In here, this handler function, this is where all the magic happens. This is what gets executed when your Lambda function is triggered. And we have a little sample response packet right here. Let's just go ahead and modify this. We could say hello from Lambda, and then I'll add to the string. We are looking for Bigfoot. Bigfoot. There we go. We're going to add to this. We need to add headers for our CORS errors, stuff like that, things that can happen. But for now, let's just go ahead, make one tiny modification that we're gonna run into a CORS problem on our front end. By the way, we set this up, so I want to deal with that right now. I'm going to go after this status code 200 in the response JSON. I'm going to hit enter. I'm going to add headers, open curly bracket, and I'm going to add an access control allow origin header. Access dash control dash allow dash origin. Did I spell that right? Origin. Close speech quote. We'll do a semicolon. I mean a colon. And then I'll do a star for everything, right? Not really a good way to lock it down, but great for getting started. And we're going to need a comma right there. And we have ways of testing this right here. We can configure a test, but I'm going to test this from my API Gateway. Let's go ahead and hit deploy, which is essentially saving it. So it says successfully updated the function Bigfoot Sightings no auth. Now let's set up our API Gateway so that our Angular app can actually get to this Lambda function. Let's go to search, and I'm just going to do API Gateway. There we go. And we have a Bigfoot Hunter Gateway there. We are going, and this one has authentication. I'm going to create a new API. You might have a splash screen if you don't have any APIs. Just look for something that says create API. And then once you do that, this part is going to be pretty similar. They changed the format, so you just have to kind of read them. I'm going to look for a REST API, not the private one, REST API. I'm going to hit build. And now we're going to have some options right here. I'll have REST, that's selected by default, new API, and you can import APIs and stuff like that, or use an example one. The example one's actually pretty good. Let's do, I made a whole bunch of these. Let's do a Bigfoot Bigfoot Hunter no auth. All right. And then endpoint type, you have the private. We don't want that. We have an edge optimized for, global network. Regional is default. I would pick regional. Let's do create API. Now take a look at this section over here on the left. It says API, and that's my Bigfoot Hunter no auth gateway. So that's the name of the gateway. And we are on resources. That's what you want, resources. Let's go over to here and you'll see that slash, that's our base directory. We're going to hit actions, go to create resource, and this is going to add to our path, this path right here. We're going to add sightings. And I can enable API Gateway cores later, so that's what I'm going to do. Let's go ahead and hit create resource. Look at that. We got a path. Now we have our base directory slash sightings is going to bring us here. What happens when we get here? Well, we're going to need, select that, an HTTP method to handle our request. So create method, and we will make this for the get method. Hit the little check. There we go. Now, when we do an HTTP get from our Angular app, and we have sightings in the pathway, we're going to get to here. We're going to handle that get request with a Lambda function. We're going to use this Lambda proxy integration. So we're not going to do anything in our API gateway to our request. And we're going to need a function. Oh, look at that. When I clicked on it, I got a list of Lambda functions that I could choose from. Sometimes you don't get this list. If you forgot the name of your function, you might have to go back to Lambda to look at it. So I'm just going to do my Bigfoot sightings, no auth. There we go. And we'll use the default timeout and we're going to save it. So when you save it, you have to allow the API gateway to talk to your Lambda. So you have to give it permissions. We'll say okay. And here is our API gateway set up. They gave us a little diagram. The request comes in here. We have a get. Then we have our method request. We'll look at that more later. Integration request. So we're using Lambda to handle the integration request. And then we go to our Lambda function. Then that sends data back to us. That's pretty cool. Let's go ahead and use this to test our Lambda function. And if you don't see this, if you don't see all of this, make sure get is selected, not sightings. So sightings gives you that. Just go to get. There you go. We're going to hit test. All right. We don't have any query strings, right? Let's go down to this blue button test, and our API is going to activate our Lambda and it's going to return a request body. And here we go. We have our access control, allow origin, where we set everything, and we got the body. Hello from Lambda. We are looking for Bigfoot. That's pretty cool. We can't use the API yet, though. We have to deploy it. Let's go to actions, and then we're going to go down to deploy API. And we're going to give it a stage, new stage. Dev's a good one, right? Dev, and you could put descriptions in there. Let's go ahead and hit deploy. All right, so here's our base URL for our API. We want to get to sightings. If you look over here on the left, we are at stages, right? So we have stages and we have dev up here. Let's click stages. It says select a stage. Oh, there's dev. That's cool. Let's open dev. Look at that, sightings. And let's go to get. All right, so that is the URL that I'm going to use in my Bigfoot Hunter app when I want to get the sightings. That's pretty cool. We don't have to save anything. We didn't really do anything. You can certainly click on it. Nothing weird's going to happen. In the next video, I'm going to use this link right here so that my Bigfoot app can talk to my Lambda. We're going to put more information in the Lambda, and then we're going to iron out any CORS issues that we have. So I will see you in the next video.